All right, Mamma Mia, here we go again. Welcome back to the old switcheroo where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jaymo. Thank you for joining us on our quest to meander-thal our way through all 200 plus games in the Nintendo Switch online catalog. Today we are joined by a very special guest, our old high school classmate and friend Ryan, also known as WarBoss on YouTube and Twitch. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing quite well. WarBoss5, incidentally. Gotta get
Oh,
that number on the end.
it's I was actually looking at that and my brain just makes it war boss.
I literally participated in some other random YouTuber's thing a while back, and that exact thing happened multiple times during the video. I was just WarBoss for the entire video.
And so you have actually quite a catalog of content on YouTube and Twitch. I was kind of poking through it before we started recording, and we actually have a lot of games in common. My wife and I are currently playing through Pokemon Scarlet and Violet right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm loving it. You're not liking it? You didn't like it?
No. I actually really enjoyed it, but just it was such an absolute nonsense show when it came out with the glitches and I
Yeah.
don't even know if they've ended up fixing it because it's been so long since I played it. But just like the stuttering, the pop in, the game engine is just bad and needs to be
Right.
like from scratch.
Mike, have you seen this? Do you know what we're referring to?
I do not.
It's so the newest Pokemon game is probably the most ambitious title the series has ever had because it's like the first game that's actually an open world and doesn't feel like it was designed for the DS, and you can like jump in and explore with your friends, and the Switch just absolutely cannot meet the hardware requirements of what this game tried to pull off. So there's really terrible pop-up and bugginess. That must have been tough to stream, Ryan. So but do you think it made like your content more enjoyable because you were able to laugh at it, or did it really just suck the joy out of it?
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. I had an absolute blast playing it. It actually caused the most some catastrophic issues
Yeah.
because when I started streaming it and I didn't realize this is what was happening until like I think it's like the second or third episode, which are on my YouTube channel. I realized that the capture card I was running through my computer and the game and the OBS were both running through my graphics card and overloading my graphics card, which was
Oh
actually
no.
causing more problems.
You can see like smoke rising up.
Oh, it was terrible. But once I switched the capture card over to using my processor and
Sure.
OBS or the other way around, either way, once I switched so they're only using one of the available resources each, it got way better
You
in
know how
as
I can
much as it could.
tell you're a better content creator than I am because you use like five acronyms. I have no idea what they mean. But gosh darn if it didn't sound impressive.
I work in tech support for a reason.
Yeah. I oh, do you work in tech support? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. I've
What
been
in
in
what
tech support
context?
for I've been doing like phone tech support for like 5 or 6 years now.
Oh man.
Although, fingers crossed, I'm supposed to start getting some mentoring and training to help move up in the world at my current employer, which I will say is in the entertainment industry and no more.
Oh, very cool. Well, okay, so I think we have a listener or two, so send good vibes to Ryan's way, you guys. I also want to just comment really quickly, because Mike and I were having a good laugh at this. We I knew of you. I think we might have shared a class at Saugus. Were you in that weird printing elective that was sort of like in a big garage with those printing presses?
No, I heard about that one, but
Okay.
I was terribly boring in high school.
Oh, stop.
I really was very much. I had senioritis from day one of freshman year. wanted I wanted the fuck. I'm sorry. I wanted the flip out of high school. Sorry.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's funny. I look back now and I think that the only thing I can remember from high school that I wish had been different is I wish I'd been in theater because
Uh,
I was a theater kid. I just didn't know it.
right. Yeah. And I can see that just with like the way you can express yourself and like your confidence in a room. It's pretty cool. So I was really happy to run into you at the high school reunion because, there wasn't really a whole lot of people that I really, fondly remembered. But then, we kind of hit it off talking about retro games. And so Mike and I, gave you the business card and talked about this podcast. And we had just recorded our Shining Force episode. And we really liked those games. And we had asked you, oh, what kind of retro games, do you ever play? And you're like, oh, yeah, Shining Force. And it was like, I've never heard anyone else ever even know of that series. And so for that to be the one that you pulled out, it's like, if we had just met you a week earlier, we totally would have had you on that episode.
I literally cannot overstate the impact that the Shining Force series had on my childhood. It
Okay,
was
it's so good, right?
so good. And
Yeah.
tragic in places, and actually had like emotional depth to it in points. Um my spatial relation abilities would not be anywhere near what they were if I didn't have to hold the entirety of Shining in the Darkness's map in my head.
Wow. Okay, so you actually went through the whole series. You started before it was even Shining Force.
I never finished Shining in the Darkness. I
Okay.
remember I got like 5 or 6 levels into the dungeon, I want to say, but I never finished it. Shining Force 1 and 2, those I finished. Those I got all the way through.
And we sort of kind of came to the conclusion that Shining Force was better than Shining Force 2, right? Mike, wasn't that what your kind of impression as well, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, I think Shining Force 2 brought in a lot of quality of life improvements, but
Yeah.
wasn't as good of a core story and game.
Hmm.
So Ryan, is that also your take?
It has been so long since I
Sure.
played.
Yeah.
I do remember. I remember the one thing I liked about Shining Force 2 over Shining Force 1 was that it was a contiguous world as opposed
Yeah.
to being in discrete chapters. And I felt like Shining Force 2 was a little bit more, I don't want to use the word handholdy, but
Yeah.
like perfect example, in Shining Force 1, you can just never get Gong. You can just go, oh, that's a nice little house there on the corner of the map. Wonder how you get to it, and never touch it,
You're right.
and just completely miss one of the. And it's not important. He's not an important character, but he gets, as I remember, he gets pretty powerful towards the end of the game. So
Yeah. I think you're right. It definitely would let you make mistakes a lot more.
yeah,
Well, so anyway, speaking of mistakes, should we get started on our episode, guys?
Let's go for it.
Yeah, quick question before we get to it. What's your opinion on the songs, like oh, I don't know, Mamma Mia or Dancing Queen, Waterloo. You guys like those songs, right?
oh sure, Abba's good. I like Abba.
Yeah. Yeah, bud, ABBA dudes is what we're calling this episode. Because we are talking about four caveman games.
Oh,
Joe and Mac, Congo's Caper, Joe and Mac 2 Lost in the Tropics, and Prehistoric Man. Mike, what do you think of my title, buddy? My ABBA dude?
I find it, I guess it's not surprising that the
What's not
same
surprising?
connection shows up. So when I started trying to figure out how Joe and Mac worked and ended up with a manual, I ended up with apparently the NES manual mislabeled,
Oh,
which I didn't know was
was it
a
mislabeled as the Flintstones game?
no,
Oh,
but it's a much more fun manual.
okay.
You might enjoy it. It's like someone just discovered that alliteration was a thing.
Oh,
But one of the things that is mentioned in there in sort of like the background, and it's different between the NES game and the SNES game for reasons that I don't know. The NES game actually mentions Bronto burgers, which stood out to me because that is
a
also a
Flintstones
term
reference.
used in the Flintstones.
Right. And they are, Hanna-Barbera is very protective of their IP. So I'm surprised.
oh,
Maybe that's
they
why it
were.
didn't continue into the SNES because I never saw Bronto burgers mentioned
Right.
in the SNES.
And that might explain my title. It might not. I can't comment. But Let's get started with our first game we're discussing today, which is Joe and Mac on the SNES, released in 1991. We'll start with the official description on the Nintendo Switch Online catalog. It says, "Can cave dudes Joe and Mac rescue the lost cave dudettes?" In this action game released for the Super NES console in 1991, life was pretty cool for our boys Joe and Mac until a bunch of Neanderthal nerds crashed their village and scared off all the cave ladies. Now they're out in the wild, lost and alone, and it's up to Joe and Mac to go save them. The dudes will have to jump, dash, and use roll attacks to get past the Stone Age obstacles in their way. But along the way, they'll get access to multiple weapons that you can switch between using the select button. You hear that, Ryan? Just make sure to pick the best weapon for the situation, and the boys are sure to make it through. Any takeaways from those descriptions, guys?
You can roll.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
can dash.
So we will get to that, but there's multiple like features that I think would have been probably printed on the side of the arcade cabinet. You guys remember arcade cabinets would have like little tips, and without that, there's a lot of things you can do in this game that, like you, Ryan, the rolling attack, the dash attack. I didn't discover you could run until I had moved on to another game in today's episode. Mike, did the booklet help out with these controls that the description mentions, but that was lost on us?
Some of them. So like the select thing was discussed in there, which was eye-opening because I didn't realize the NES did not have nearly as many controls, and I read the wrong manual.
Oh,
Initially.
NES, as in you read the 8-bit version booklet.
Yeah, and so that one actually like it has a bunch of alliteration and it has like prehistoric facts they've just kind of scattered in there and all kinds of stuff.
Did you get the sense they were like legitimate, accurate facts?
Yeah, I think they all actually do check out, which is
Surprising.
somewhat surprising because then when you get to
Yeah.
the game itself, like the phrase Neanderthal nerds, which falls into that category of alliteration and is the only bit that seemed to make it over to the SNES version,
Mhm.
does have me wondering, like, are these Neanderthals that also happen to be nerds, or are we calling all Neanderthals nerds, which leads to questions of if Joe and Mac are in fact like an earlier stage of human evolution?
You always go so deep into the lore.
All I could think when I heard Neanderthal nerds is I'm like, oh, good, we're using nerds as just a blanket pejorative. Fantastic.
Right. And it's funny, Ryan, because this is back in when this game was made. I would say, I mean, wouldn't you say that gaming has become so much more mainstream that if you are a gamer, you are no longer seen as a nerd? It's like a separate thing. But back when this game was made, if you were playing this game, you were probably a nerd.
Oh yeah, no, but this is, you said it's 91, so this is not
Yeah.
terribly far away from the era when the response to nerds was a gigantic hairy caveman looking jock yelling
Now,
nerds at
were
the
you
top of
guys
his voice.
bullied though for that? I mean, I was bullied for being sort of soft and kind of tattletale-y. Mike and I. Hey, Mike. Oh, I can't believe I'm going to put this in a recording. Do you remember
You're
the
gonna
first
try.
activity? You remember what we used to do during our lunch and brunch breaks in kindergarten? We would patrol the playground and look for people breaking rules to then go run to the yard duties and tell on them.
Oh
We were
my
like,
god, you were that little Monty Burns looking kid from
oh my
Recess.
God, we were. We so were. But you know what, though? We live in a society,
Yep.
okay? Order versus chaos. I don't regret it in the slightest. Speaking of chaos, let's can we talk about this arcade flyer? I think it's so much fun. What are your first thoughts when I show you this flyer for the Joe and Mac arcade game from Japan?
Yeah, no, that's a 90s advertisement, all right.
That's it's weird because it doesn't really feel like it has a focal point as
Yeah.
such.
So for those that aren't watching on YouTube, it is Joe swinging on a vine towards the center of the image, holding one of the cave babes, and Mac is down in the water below, I guess, jealous that he is not the one with his arm wrapped around the honey. And there's like, dinosaurs attacking from all sides of the image. There's even one of the cave Neanderthal nerds flying a little flying helicopter vehicle. I don't know. I think it's fun. It's really stylized, very colorful. You see all these different enemies and boss types, and this stinger in the center that's written in kanji. Brian, you don't read kanji, right?
I do not know.
Okay, get a load of this. It says, "Who can have girls kiss reward? Fight, caveman ninja."
So it's the same thing that's in English below it.
Uh, yep.
Wow, that's
I
impressive.
didn't notice that.
What
Oh my
I'm
God.
loving looking at this
I worked to
absolute
translate that. Oh my God.
what I love
Sorry, Ryan,
about
what were
this
you saying?
absolute monstrosity is the fact that they're spoiling like the first three bosses because they're just scattered around the thing. But more than that, it's the positively Liefeldian proportions on Joe. Like
Yeah.
his bicep is the size of the girl's head. His head is the size of the entire upper half of her body. He's got one foot that looks like it's again the size of half of her body, but then another foot that looks almost like it matches hers.
Nice.
It's all over the place with
Like,
this artwork.
I feel like the foot's supposed to feel closer, but like
Yeah.
her body versus his head, like his head is
Yeah.
further away. Like that does not,
Yeah, no, it's
those proportions are something.
But Ryan gets bonus points for turning Liefeld into an adjective. That was amazing.
oh yeah, no,
Um,
this is over buff Captain America in in all but actual image.
well, so can I posit though that this is still better than the North American box art, which I'm showing you now? Oh God, I hate this so much.
That
Um,
is
isn't it awful?
This reminds me. Oh. So Caveman Ninja was the original name of the art.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I should have mentioned that.
oh,
Yes, when
okay.
it was released in Japan, it was called Caveman Ninja. The Joe and Mac thing was eventually a subtitle for the series, but it was the change of title when it was
Okay.
brought over here. Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, I was gonna say this sort of reminds me of an instance of a focus group that we were both in that involved a movie poster being shown that felt like you'd given someone half an hour in Photoshop.
Are you talking about the surfing movie?
I wasn't going to get into specifics, but yes.
Oh, well, I mean, there's been multiple surfing movies, so we should probably just stop there.
Yeah.
Um, this is for those who aren't on YouTube, the North American box art. You have this big kind of clip art looking Tyrannosaurus Rex in the center of the image, and then you have two cavemen who you guys agree with me. That's not Joe and Mac. They don't look like our
No, not even
characters.
slightly.
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean they're wearing the little leaf diaper or whatever you want to call that, but it just looks like totally different people. And then in the bottom left corner, you have the Joe and Mac logo, but it's like when my students are being lazy on Google Slides and they don't go to make a transparent background image, so they post a picture on Google Slides with this weird black box around it that's totally interrupting the flow. It almost, would you guys agree too? It looks like the T-Rex is even annoyed at the layout of this image.
It kind of, if you look at the dinosaur's eye line,
Yes.
it is
Okay.
going to the logo, like
Yes.
getting in the way, not at
Yes.
the two things falling at it.
Right. And then also like they're kind of in a jungle, but it's all like weirdly psychedelic smeared and they're all like there's a motion blur effect. The only thing I like about this image is the description pre-hysterical two-player fun. That's that I like that.
Does it feel
Someone
like they're
gets
attacking Reptar?
kind of
Yes,
Reptar
yes, it
vibes.
looks like
Yes.
Reptar. Absolutely.
Oh man, though. Man, I Reptar on ice. Dinosaur. Come on, anybody? Ryan.
I have
Nothing.
vague memories, but I could not sing it for the life of me.
I probably know every word to Reptar on ice.
Well, and what we're looking at here too, what the very first thing my brain went is this is not a T-Rex because a T-Rex, is 15, 20 feet tall. This thing's like
Sure.
80 feet tall based on the size of its eye in relation to
Right.
Joe and Mac.
Yes.
Like
Yes. This is
they could,
Godzilla.
yeah, no, this is huge. They could climb up that thing's nostril.
Right. Unless it's some weird abomination where like right off the frame it's like got a tiny little body or something.
I would not put it past the artist of this cover.
Well, can I give you guys some trivia on Joe and Mac?
No.
Sure.
So it was okay, Mike. So you plug your ears for a minute. Ryan wants it. This was published by Data East, and it was directed by Makoto Kikuchi, and he worked on a couple of other interesting titles. There was this forgotten Marvel fighting game called Avengers in Galactic Storm, which I thought was kind of cool because it's like this Marvel fighting game, but it kind of has Mortal Kombat style, sort of like photographic character designs.
And you know this is from the 90s because they're using Thunderstrike instead of Thor.
Heck yeah, yeah, yeah. And that wasn't that his code name for a minute?
I can
I
never
thought that was comic
remember.
accurate.
I can't remember if
Yeah.
Thunderstrike was a different guy,
Okay.
but
With Mjolnir.
they just happened to have Mjolnir. Yeah.
It's not nearly though as obscure and weird as the other game I saw found he worked on called Diet Go-Go, a 1992 arcade game in which you and a friend throw food into the mouths of enemies until they are plump enough to be defeated. And between every level, the game literally fat shames whichever player accidentally picked up more junk food in the previous stage.
Delightful.
Oh man. Like I feel like a lot of my students think that, like, they live in a pretty insensitive time, and they do, but like there was a certain um glorious callousness to the 90s that I don't think should ever come back, but it is kind
Oh
of a
yeah. Yeah.
marvel to look upon.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
The
fascinating.
was you're you're gonna play Diet Go-Go, Mike?
I'm just intrigued. It's just
It's a very unique image and premise. I do actually find it interesting though. I didn't know till just this now, but looking at the screenshot of it, the little, what do you call it, slot wheel at the top of the screen. We're gonna see that again in one of our other games. So I guess
Oh
that was a
yeah.
thing to note.
Yeah.
I also thought it's a bit interesting in the is I'm guessing this is a cutscene on the right where we've got
Yeah, that's between levels. It shows whichever player, you know, gained more weight in a very
okay.
unflattering cutscene.
So okay. The player that is like sitting cross-legged and eating is eating like meat off of a bone, which is the same style of meat
Yeah.
off of a bone that is a pickup for health
That was a
these
big
games.
thing. Have you guys ever eaten meat off a bone like that? I mean, I've had like, I've had like ribs, but I've never had like the roast with the bone sticking out of both sides. Is that real?
I've had a turkey leg at fair, but no,
That's
it's
probably as
about as
close as it
close.
gets. Did you ever find it in like a trash can that you kicked over? Because that happens a lot in video
No,
games.
no, thankfully.
So the game Joe and Mac, it went through a lot of different changes as it was ported from the arcade to the PC and then the Genesis, NES, SNES. First of all, when the game was localized for the North American release, the intro cutscene was changed to remove the scene in which the antagonists drag cave women out of their homes by their hair. The stateside developers at Data East didn't want kids to think that that was okay. This is according to a 2018 Entertainment Weekly article on the subject of translating games for domestic markets. The SNES version we have on Nintendo Switch Online, it mentions that there's, Ryan was saying, the Neanderthal nerds scared away the women with their bad breath. But what's weird about that is that the cutscene wasn't actually changed. It's just cut short. So what you see in the version that is on Nintendo Switch Online is arguably more disturbing. You see the villains enter the hut, you hear the women scream, and then it just fades to black. Like,
Oh God,
right?
that's so
Like
much
this is
worse.
it's barbaric, but at least you can like see that they're like, I guess, still alive. Pretty disturbing image. Mike, any thoughts on this cutscene?
Do you mean the cut scene or the regular cut scene?
Whatever you got to say. I'm sorry. Shouldn't
'Cause-
put you on the spot when it's this weird of a topic.
yeah, because I am sort of surprised they didn't include that because number one, it's meant to be the villains. Number
Sure.
two, there's some questionable junk in later games. So there's an element of like, well, we didn't want to have anything that we didn't want like lessons to be coming from. It's like then I question your later decisions.
Sure. I mean, yeah, you say they're the villains, but also like I think it's sort of intended to be comical, but it's pretty horrific. But the other important thing to note is that by removing the opening cutscene, or cutting it short, I should say, you also remove the introduction of the fat slash ugly cave woman character, and that is not my choice of words. That is, Mike, don't make a video where you just cut that part out. That's where it ends. That's how this character is referred to by Joe and Mac fans on the internet. But she never comes up again until the credit sequence at the end of the game, where it shows the titular characters being chased by a horde of cave women that they rescued throughout the game, including the larger woman you see here. But in a prank on sound creator Atomic Hanada, if you hold the L, R, X, and A buttons when his name comes up in the credits, you can turn all the cave women into the plus-sized versions. And this is a shout out to VG Facts contributor Mad Deleting Later for this screenshot and this hot tip. So, like I said, the 90s was pretty crazy callous when it came to this sort of thing. Ryan, you give a huh. What are you thinking, buddy?
No, it's just, I like, obvious problematic bull nonsense aside. Sorry, I'm going to be working real hard throughout this thing to not.
You're doing great.
I curse like a sailor under normal.
You're doing amazing. Keep going.
It's just interesting because it's honestly not the content, obviously, but the fact that there is this bizarre hidden little bit of code that you would only know to do if you had either been the one to put it in or data mined the code at some point in the future, because there's no indication that a button hold during the credits would create this series of events. But that kind of stuff I honestly kind of miss from a lot of more modern games.
Yeah,
I get why it's not done, because, modern games being as hideously complex as they are, but it was an artifact of the time, the 80s and 90s games, where you just have this bizarre little thing you could do at exactly the right point, at exactly the right time to get like a message from a developer or something. It's like, hi, I put this in here because I could. Enjoy the game.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting that she is in fact a recurring character, and I did not realize that.
Yeah, because she appears in one of the sequels.
She does.
Yeah. And I don't know, though, Ryan. I completely agree. I feel like that's one of the things I'm really loving about this podcast is that I'm researching these retro games, and you really get the sense of like the artist's hand. And yeah, sometimes it's messed up, like right here. But old games had like a kind of a subversive personality. And you mentioned like data mining, but like that wasn't being done in the 90s. Like this was either printed in Nintendo Power or not discovered till like way later.
Yeah.
Or
it was on cool. Game Genie or some other.
Oh, I loved Game Genie
system like that.
Mike, did you have a Game Genie?
Yes, I think so.
It was the thing like you plugged a cartridge into the Super Nintendo or the Genesis, and then you plugged the game into that cartridge, and it had like this middleman that I guess would like activate cheats or something. It felt like magic. It's so cool. So let's get into the joy pros of this game, things we like about it. And I would like to start off by saying that, the game has these really large, colorful characters. I think Joe and Mac as a series, it's really full of humor and expression. And I think it has a pretty good range of environments. You have like ice caves and treetop levels and, a boneyard full of, lightning strikes and, dinosaur bones in the background. I just thought that Joe and Mac, even though the old first game in the series doesn't run that well, it's a little slow, I like looking at it. What do you guys think of the aesthetic?
I think it looks great. Like,
yeah,
it's enjoyable. It has, like, I think the bosses are actually really cool in this one.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite?
That's a tough question. I think just because it was fun to see, and because I like what it is, and because the NES manual said the names of all of these.
All the bosses?
Yeah, although I think the levels don't fully match up. I think there is differences in levels because at a certain point things didn't match up, but it was enough for me to figure out that the giant plant is a Triffid.
Right.
Which is the day
you
or
said
the
this
night.
Was a movie reference.
Yeah. I think it's initially a book, and then it was made into Bad Sci-Fi, where in that one, so here it's this giant. This is much more like an Audrey 2 kind of situation, where it's this giant plant that just kind of stays in one spot and will try to eat you. But initially, like the Triffids, like move around, and blind people. And so the whole like the movie is a whole lot of blind people stumbling about being eaten by plants and the
That sounds
hand.
horrifying. Is the movie called Triffids?
So the book and the movie are called The Day of the Triffid. The original novel, because I just pulled up Wikipedia, the original novel was released in 1951.
Whoa.
So this is a very old story.
Yeah, and the movie is, if not no later than the 60s, I think it may be 50s as well.
62, according to this. And then we had a series back in 2009.
Huh.
Yeah, and incidentally, the Wikipedia page for Triffids lists like other places that have mentioned them and does not currently. It doesn't. So anyone that is less lazy than me that would like to add that Joe and Mac has Triffids.
Get on that, Ryan. So yeah, the gameplay in this one as the 2-button gameplay, it's pretty simplistic, but I think the devs make a decent attempt at mixing things up from moment to moment. Some levels have you fighting for the high ground as you climb to this treetop, and then you fight like a flying dinosaur as the boss of that one. Another one has you jumping from the backs of one enemy to another to bridge bottomless pits. So like your enemies have to be your platforms, which I thought was kind of clever. And did either of you get to the last level of this game?
No.
No, I got bodied by the mammoth.
I needed like one more continue on this sucker. I really wanted to beat this game. And
you got far, but not to the end.
I would get to, I think, like level 10.
Wow. And this game's hard. That's impressive. So the final level takes place inside the body of a giant dinosaur, complete with visible circulatory systems and quivering cilia. Did I say that right?
I think that's how that's pronounced, yeah.
Okay. The little wigglies down there. So I don't know. I just thought that was pretty cool. And it's always tickles me when like this happened kind of a lot in games, like an enemy would swallow you and then there'd be an entire level and the scale is all off. It's like a TARDIS in there.
Yeah.
But I like the levels in Joe and Mac. They were nothing mind-blowing, but I never got bored of them. What do you guys think of the levels?
Yeah, it was a baseline competence on display, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
There was absolutely a lot of the things that were very much hallmarks of the time when it came to level design, like like for instance, this image on the screen right now of the ice cave. It's like you need to drop perfectly there, or you're going to lose some health. But I'm sure when we get to the stuff we're rather annoyed with, I'll talk about it more. But I don't know if the controls really kept up with that kind of design.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, sort of staples like, well, the ice level, so the floor is going to be slippery.
Yeah.
And then the river level, okay, so you can't fall in the water or it's an instant death. Yeah. It never felt boring to me, but it also never felt like novel or creative, really.
I did think that one thing with the level design, that the specific level that is going up the tree.
Yes.
And I think this may be me talking about a little much larger trope to it. Is there's something frustrating to me where a platformer is totally okay with you moving left or right as much as you'd like, but is so unforgiving of, the screen has moved up 8 pixels. You will now die if you fall to where there was a platform just off the screen.
That is interesting. You're right, because I guess in the programming of the games, falling would often trigger a death state, right? So if you have a level that's scrolling vertically, the death state is always at the bottom of the screen because that's how it works when the game is going left to right. Ryan, I don't know if you've listened to other episodes, but sometimes I make these grand statements about programming despite knowing nothing about programming. But did that hold up? Did that make sense?
That makes sense. I imagine that the death state, I imagine that fall off bottom of, avatar fall off bottom of screen, kill avatar is just part of the core code.
Yes.
And I imagine the level of effort that would be required to code the camera to be able to pan down, especially since the camera is never going to be able to move as fast as the character falls. So,
Oh yeah, right.
yeah, because think about every camera movement you've seen this game do. It is never as fast as a character falls.
Yeah.
Because, now you're having to get the game to write lines of pixels onto the screen from nothing.
Yeah.
Which is gonna be far more difficult than the simple act of changing the color of existing pixels on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure it makes sense from a programming perspective that you would need to have the bottom of the screen be instant death, regardless of what might actually be below it. The same way I'm sure Mario would, if they'd let you go off the left side of the screen, it probably would have killed you because they didn't know how to scroll back to the left.
That back way, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we're kind of getting towards the negative. Can I say one more Joy Pro I like about this game? Is that you never go that far without being offered a weapon. And the weapons, you have this flurry of bones that sort of have this arc to them. So that felt kind of fun, like a grenade toss, like grenades that didn't explode, I guess.
Mhm.
And then you have boomerangs, you have fireballs that you can spit or throw. And I really got a kick out of the stone wheel. Did you guys ever find this one?
No, never found
Yes,
that one.
that thing was also fun because once you got the hang of it, so the others, so the bones you just kind of throw. The boomerangs come back because otherwise they'd be sticks. The fire would kind of do a little bit of explosion when it hit something, but what was interesting
Right.
with the wheels was if you threw it and it landed on a surface, and that could be a vertical surface as well, it would just start rolling along. And so there's
Yeah.
areas where like I was just spamming that or to the extent that I can. You can only have two of them out, I think.
Yeah.
There's levels where I would just keep throwing the wheel off to the side and then watching it go up a thing I was gonna have to jump over and just take out whatever was up there without really having to expose myself at all. And that was great.
It was a cool weapon design. I would say probably the only weapon in this game that felt creative, but also great, from a brand perspective. You have a game of caveman and they're literally like they just invented the wheel and it can hit multiple enemies and it just, does a ton of damage against bosses. But the boomerang is the goat though. Like that's how
Oh yeah.
well, actually, that's how I Nintendo. Wait, hold on. This doesn't work unless you guys ask me. Mike, ask me, please.
Oh, were you able to beat the game with the boomerang?
I Nintendo did. I reward myself, Ryan, with a sound effect every time I actually beat a game.
Was not expecting that.
Yeah, but the boomerang though, like this is how I beat the game because you just spam these things and it hits the enemy twice. Once going, once coming back to you,
Mhm.
and there was no reason in my mind to use other weapons except for incredibly specific circumstances, like Mike was just talking about.
They did do different levels of damage.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah,
fireball was by far the most powerful.
Yeah, in fact, the manual does make the comment fire can be our most powerful weapon, which I do enjoy that that's said without like sounding like it's actually about the game. That just feels like the manual decided to give some general life advice there.
yeah, that sounds like that's the borderline manifesto. I
Yeah.
think. So this game is not perfect. Can we get into the Joy Cons?
I have many.
Yeah, I'm going to start with because we're talking about the weapons,
Yeah.
and this does have a two-player mode that we tried.
Yes, you guys talk about. You tried it right before recording.
Yeah, I and I guess part of it is they do have a two-player mode where you're sort of against the other player, but
Called Super Two Player.
if you have a weapons power-up system in place and two players, I feel like you should have done something to make both players have a shot at getting the power-ups and not competing for them because the weapon drops seemed well paced for one player to kind of as you go along and get new things every so often. And it's incredibly frustrating with two players because then you're just like, well, great, I'm at a boss and I have a club. This is going to go wonderful.
Oh, that's awful.
And that's actually one of the things I didn't like. Not necessarily about the weapons, but what I didn't like is the absence of a weapon. If you don't have a weapon, this game is exponentially more difficult.
And less fun.
Yeah, and way less fun. And at the same time, having a projectile breaks some of the bosses and enemies over its knee. It's like I'm just going to
Right.
sit here as far back as I can and just keep tossing and spamming and never have to do anything other than that. Oh, look, the boss is dead.
So I'm afraid to ask because I get a lot of grief on this podcast from all sorts of people. I abuse the rewind feature to the point that like I want to start streaming and do what you did, Ryan. I think you're pretty cool and brave to do that. But like I'm just really worried that people are going to be like, "Really? You rewind after every time you get hit?" But pretty much I rewind after every time I get hit. So I kept my
Perfect
weapon
first
the
time.
whole time. Yeah.
I did appreciate that you keep your weapons
Even when you get hit.
when you get hit.
Yeah.
You keep your weapons when you die. It's only when
Right.
you use a continue that you have to get them again. And I do
Yeah.
think they're spread out enough on the level that they're relatively easy to get back. And certainly in this game, when you die, you just have, the ghost comes up and you can kind of position yourself, which you can manipulate to your own benefit sometimes.
Mhm.
But you can, when you come back from that, you just come back into the level. So
Yeah.
you're picking up from where you were with what you had, which I think
And
is
that I
great. The one downside is it is possible. It happened to me and it happened to Ryan when we were playing, which is
okay.
you come back as the angel and you get stuck, and the angel cannot. It's specifically like if you died because you fell, when the angel rises back up from where you fell, the angel gets stuck. And so when the angel goes back to, and now you're back as a playable character again, you just fall right back into the same darn pit of death.
So what Mike's referring to for those who aren't going to play the game, and by the way, all of the games today are available on the base level subscription of Nintendo Switch Online. You do not need the expansion pack. So if you're listening to this, you probably have access to these games. So fire them up so you can kind of, leave us a comment or a voicemail on oldswitcheroo.com. Give us your thoughts on Joe and Mac. But for those who haven't or aren't going to try the game, what Mike's referring to is that in Joe and Mac, there's a death mechanic where when you die, a little angel rises up from your corpse, and it looks like Joe and Mac, and it's kind of cute. And you can fly around the stage for a few seconds, clipping through enemies in the environment, and you basically get to pick your spawn point, which I thought was cool. But you're saying that if this happened in an inopportune time, there would be no ideal spawn point, and you just die again.
No, it's not that there's no good spot. It's that that bit of like, oh, you clip through things. It's like, no, I got stuck on the platform
Oh,
that I fell from and couldn't get up and onto it.
Got stuck on the edge of the platform, like because there's the little pit that I fell into, and when I was coming back up, my angel touched the corner of the platform where and it just got stuck there, and I'm like, I can't move up, and I just fell right down the pit again.
yeah, that's life sometimes. Hit detection, really spotty and inconsistent in this game.
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like you take damage from spikes that you swear are a few inches away from you. You fail these jumps that you expected to make. Some enemies they'll damage you upon touch, and
Mhm.
other enemies you can like jump on their head and like ride them around for a few seconds. And there's no way to figure out which ones you can do that to or like which enemy state they have to be in for that to work. It felt like a sloppy game. Would you guys agree?
Oh yeah, like you can land like some of the Neanderthals when you're fighting them will do this leaping air attack
Yeah.
where they just leap into the air. And I discovered while we were doing the two-player thing, if you land on them during the air attack, their head doesn't have a hitbox. You just
Oh.
land there and stand there on their head as they are leap. You're basically standing in their mouth because when they leap upwards, the head tilts back so you can see their big open, presumably screaming mouth. And so you basically land on their nose and you can like stuff your foot down their throat, but you just got
It
to
doesn't
sit there.
damage them though.
No, yeah, because they're underneath you, and why would you ever need to attack something directly underneath you?
Yeah.
I feel like I mostly was just dealing with the pterodactyls that you can ride, which was a thing mentioned in the manual, and I didn't attempt to try to see if I could land on other things.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it didn't bother me.
Sure. But speaking of leaping attack, though, I use that segue too much. I'll try to work on that. Did you guys do the super jump? Like you hold down the up on the joystick and you press the jump button and you like fly straight up like Sonic the Hedgehog almost? You guys
Yes.
know what I'm referring to?
Yes. I
Yeah.
spent
You
far
need
too
to.
much time trying to get, since you get the weapons power ups from those eggs, and the very first level has one out of reach. I spent far
Oh,
too much time trying to get that
Yeah, you
before I
can only
eventually
get it
gave
in the
up.
Super 2 player because you
No,
need someone else to stand on.
there's a pterodactyl that shows that you can move a little bit to the right, get the pterodactyl to come in. Then you have to jump on the
Uh,
pterodactyl and then make that other jump, but it's a sort of a slanted surface, so it's a total
ugh.
pain. And then when I just discovered it's a boomerang that I can get later in the level, at
You
least the
felt like
first
your
time, I'm
time
like,
was
okay, you know
wasted.
what? I'm never doing this again. I will get
Yeah.
later weapon. Like if I was a better player, this would be great to get an early weapon. I am not, but I am at least a good enough player to get to later and get the weapon upgrade then.
I want to know the conversation that took place in the development office when they were designing that because they're like, hey, Frank, you know what would be a great way to start our game? We're going to give the player an extremely difficult platforming challenge involving two obscure mechanics that we have not tutorialized at all, just so they can get to a weapon that will give them two screens later. How's that sound?
You're a genius,
Brilliant,
boss.
Joe.
I
Great job,
actually,
boss.
I think you may be more right than you mean to be, and I think it's actually useful. Is it very quickly shows you that there are things that you will have to jump on top of the pterodactyls to get to, and it kind of
Yeah.
establishes that very early on of that's a this is a mechanic that we are using, and we're using it from the start.
And I suppose if you had read, that makes sense if you had read the manual, which I did not. I played all four games today and didn't read a single manual or blurb or anything. I just went
Yeah.
in blind.
And I think that's a valid way to approach it.
Not back then, it wasn't.
Yeah. Right.
Back in the 90s, you had to read the manual. That was important.
This is what happens when we bring on a tech support guy. He gets very passionate about RTFM.
Oh no, because I have a bookcase in my apartment full of manuals from games
Yeah,
back when you had to read the manual to understand what the heck you were doing.
but I think in this case, because you can't just reach that, I think it immediately tells the player there is a mechanic here that would allow me to reach this.
But I hated the super jump mechanic because you just rocket up so fast you can't control it. You're not invincible, so like I was constantly hitting enemies as I flew up to the screen. It felt more like God's hand was just flicking me towards the sky than I was like actually jumping. So I really grew tired of having to use that, and especially then the game would like slow down if there was too many moving characters on the screen. And like, this was an arcade port, a game ported to the Super Nintendo. I can't fault them for struggling to keep up hardware wise, but it's certainly, I don't know, made the game less fun to look at with just how it was running sort of poorly. We have a lot of games to cover today. So, any other Joy Cons about the first Joe and Mac?
I think one thing I'm going to say is because the weapons do different amount of damage, but then your bosses have integer damage points that are displayed
Yes.
that do not really match up. I think there is a frustrating thing of it's very hard to tell whether or not you're doing damage. Like I wish this was a continuous bar so that you could see, each boomerang hit is maybe doing a little bit of damage, and if you used fire, it would be larger.
Or like
Right.
Mega Man, where there's just a lot of little lines, so
Mega Man.
oh yeah, I
Yeah.
took a third of his health with this one. Clearly, I'm using the right attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, because instead it sometimes just feels like I don't know if I'm actually hitting them. And that is a frustrating thing to be dealing with.
Absolutely.
And then I think the other thing I was going to mention, because it has, I guess there's an, I don't know if I'd consider this inconsistent or random or just opaque, that on each
Which
level,
synonym? Yeah.
yeah, I think on each level, or at least on many of the levels, you have a chance to reach a bonus level if you find a red egg and then break the red egg when there's no enemies on screen
Oh, is
to
that what it was?
yes, to release like this pink pterodactyl that takes you to a bonus level. And very annoyingly, and I don't understand exactly how they define this, fire and lava count as enemies, and those are not things you can kill in this game. And so there's some bits where I'm like, I don't know how I have to be in the right position to like get this.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, oh, I've cleared this, I can go get it. And those would take you to sort of a little bonus level, with one of the key bits being that you can get a key out of that. And those
This is
keys,
Joe and Mac 1 you're talking about?
yes,
Huh.
you get those keys,
Oh, these
and then
locked doors on the overworld screen.
exactly. And
I
once you
never
got
found
through
one.
those, then you had a couple different options. You either had, there's a couple where it's you pretty much get dropped straight into a fight, and if you win the fight, you get a caveman girl kiss that is
Nice.
I think also heals you up. There's a
As they
couple
do.
that are food falling from the sky that I think is, so long as none of them reach the ground, you can just keep collecting. And I don't know the point of getting that beyond full health.
Well, points, right? This was an arcade game.
I don't know if it was even giving me points.
Huh.
I thought it was just health.
Okay.
And then there's one where you have multiple eggs and you basically pick which one you can get a weapon, or I think you might be able to get an extra life out of that.
I had no idea there was like bonus levels in this game. I was just cruising through. I guess it's kind of hard to find the keys to get to one.
Part of that is to get to the key, you have to break open one of those red eggs and get
Yeah.
the pink pterodactyl to take you there.
Yeah.
But to do that, you have to have everything on. You have to have no enemies on screen, and it was very easy to break those eggs when you didn't mean to. And so you kind of had to get lucky into accidentally doing that once to go, oh, this is what I need to be doing.
Yeah.
So there,
Sort of a
but to get to
half-baked
those
concept.
level, I wish that there was something that distinguished on the map which of those bonus level things you were going to get. Of, is this the one that will heal me up, or is this the one that will give me weapons? Because I may need one or the other. And
Right.
sort of there's nothing to really know. You just have to know what they all are.
Sort of
Well,
like
I
how in
wonder
Mario,
if the over. Go ahead.
like how
Sorry.
in Mario 3, you had Toad's house, you had the Hammer Bros. You knew exactly
Yes.
what you were getting into.
Yeah.
Right. And what I was going to say is that I wonder if the arcade release of this even had the overworld map, because like you don't want players sitting on a map, like, you want there to be continuous action on the screen.
Yeah, and I am curious about that because the structure of the NES menu was sufficiently different.
Yeah.
And I think like it doesn't have the switching of weapons in that. And so I'm suspecting the arcade was a whatever you picked up last.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And so I wouldn't expect the random weapon option, because that's very useful if you have died and now you're trying to get or you've used to continue and you need to get your weapons back. That is really useful to have that and go and be, I'm going to take my chances and I will hopefully get one of the weapons I don't have real quick.
I mean, metaphorically, aren't we all just hoping for the weapons that we needed? I thought I had something there. I don't. Can we go to the next game, boys?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Let's go to our next game for today, which is Congo's Caper, released on the SNES in 1993. All right, let me list the read off the description on Nintendo Switch Online. It says a club and a little courage are all Congo needs. In this action game released in 1993 for the Super NES console, you catch up with Congo as some demon kid swoops in out of nowhere and captures Congette. As Congo, you set out to rescue her and set things right. Luckily, a super kid like Congo knows how to jump, attack, and can perform all sorts of jump attack combos. I'm sorry. I'm just cracking up at the description. You can jump, you can attack, you can jump attack. Like, you got it all. And once Congo collects the 3 magic rubies, he turns into Super Congo. As Super Congo, he can jump even higher and hover by jumping repeatedly in midair. Oh, guys, Congo's Caper. What do you think?
I really should have read these manuals. I
Yeah,
really,
did
really
you
Description
should
not
have
know
read
just
these manuals.
that description just say some demon kid, like we're not gonna like it doesn't get a name or anything. That just feels like filler.
right? It's pretty weird. It's like, oh yeah,
Also,
some demon kid. We don't even know who it is, even though it's our character.
also, it's weird to introduce metaphysics into a because like caveman games, not terribly scientific. You know, dinosaurs, cavemen, Neanderthals, all living together and beating the crap out of each other. Um,
Yes.
but but still, the inclusion of a demon feels weird.
Well, so I forgot to mention Joe and Mac. If you guys can see my screenshot here, the final level that takes place inside the dinosaur, for some reason, the last boss is a devil, and he can summon clones of himself, and he can hypnotize you. And there's like this giant beating heart of the dinosaur that's like next to you. It's weird. I agree, Ryan. It's like this weird pivot into a different genre, kind of.
Yeah, I didn't realize this was a crossover with Super Ghouls and Ghosts.
It looks a lot like the what's his name, Firebrand or Red Arima or whatever.
Yeah, I
Um,
cannot remember his name. I was trying to look it up and I cannot remember for the life of
yeah, he
me.
was in MVC3, I remember. Well, so first impressions are often from the box art. So here is the Japanese cover. This is Caveman Ninja 2 Rookie's Adventure. It's this game in Japan, and I guess in here too, but it was more prominently discussed in Japan. It has this really convoluted tale. Ryan, you said that you thought that the story of Congo's Caper was just like, oh, get your girlfriend, right?
Yeah, well, again, I didn't read the manual, so I was going off of the half-second blurb at the beginning. Um, Actually, really quick, so what year did you say this was released?
This was released in America in 1993. That's probably the year before in Japan, I would guess.
I was gonna say someone really liked Dragon Ball.
So Ryan's referring to the Japanese cover here. Let me describe it for people not on YouTube. We got the main protagonist here. It's kind of sliding towards the viewer on a rainbow, which never happens in the game, by the way. I never saw a rainbow, or at least never one I could stand on. And then you got dinosaurs on the left and the right. And I thought it was interesting that this one has like the gems, the little collectibles kind of prominently displayed. But Caveman Ninja 2 Rookie's Adventure, or as it came to be in America, Congo's Caper, it's a very convoluted tale involving a restless dino god named Gao, I would guess Gao, Gao, forcing conflict on Wookiee land. Mike, Wookiee
Wait.
land. What?
Wookiee Land.
You heard
This
me.
is post Star Wars.
1E.
Interestingly, in the NES menu for NES manual for Joe
Joe
and
and Mac.
Mac, it does list one of the levels as just being called Jurassic Park.
Bronto Burgers, Jurassic Park, they were just begging to get sued.
Serious,
Michael
yes, there's a
Crichton, you
whole lot of,
thieving.
and the Triffids thing, really. So it's interesting to see
Yeah.
that continue here of just how much they're just taking things like, that's a good name, we're going to use it.
Well, so it's funny because Wookiee, though, I mean, I feel like only super fans know this, but Wookiee is spelled Wookie in Star Wars, right, Mike? There's two E's at the end.
Correct.
Hmm.
Yeah. So this one, only one E. But so Gao forces conflict on Wookiee land by sending troops to terrorize the disobedient monkey tribe, spelled with no E's. But the
So it's
Maru, the
just
god of
Trib?
peace. Fell right into that one. Good job. Maru, the god of peace and love, sends down a powerful red gem from heaven to speed up Rookie's evolution and turn him into the caveman ninja. So that's,
Wait,
I mean, it's a lot more than Ryan got as far as like the opening cutscene of this game.
go back to that Maru bit.
Maru, the god of peace and love, sending down a powerful red gem to speed up Rookie's evolution.
How's Maru spelled on that, just out of curiosity?
Maru.
Okay, that is a Maori war god. Like, I thought that name
Oh,
sounded familiar. That is an interesting,
there's a lot more going on in these games than people might realize,
yeah, there's
at least
more going on.
conceptually.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah, if it's good or not.
Yeah. And well, I mean, even to the point of I don't know if it's weird foreshadowing that this like rainbow bridge thing is not in this game, but it is in this franchise.
Right. Are you talking about the next one?
Yes, that'll come up later.
Okay.
So it's odd. Back on this cover, does it look like one of the caveman dudes over there on the left has hit himself in the back of his own head?
Yeah, kind of. The guy in the sort of top right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I also kind of really want that pterodactyl as just like a reaction gif.
Yeah, very Avatar-esque.
It just has this look of I can't believe you've done this to me.
But the North American box art, like, okay. Not only does it change the title, Caveman Ninja 2 Rookie's Adventure, you know, I wonder if this was different enough from Joe and Mac that they didn't want to kind of throw people off. Gameplay feels kind of different. It feels more like a traditional 2D platformer than like an arcade game, in my opinion. But once again, this does not look like the protagonist of the game. This looks like another generic caveman I mean, it kind of looks like the last caveman we're going to discuss today. Wouldn't you agree? It looks more like prehistoric man, Sam, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, there's certainly also that like the enemy, the sort of the caveman-y enemies here look closer to like tribbles with bats.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what they look like, and I may be literally the only person that is seeing this. I'm a huge D&D guy. And
Okay.
there is an enemy in Dungeons and Dragons called a Korred, Korred, that looks exactly like that. They are basically like, for the folks just watching, it looks like it's arms and legs coming off of a big round face head body
Are they
combination.
bearded?
Yes, they're very heavily bearded. They have goat legs in D&D, but it's almost identical in look.
Yeah, they're basically actually I looked basically they give off a similar vibe to they and I guess the drawings here both also are like a Captain Caveman vibe, except these things feel like they have no body. They feel like heads.
Is Captain Caveman a thing I'm not aware of?
Okay, so
The Hanna-Barbera
yeah,
cartoon.
we're back to Hanna-Barbera. This is great.
Oh, I've never heard of this one.
Yeah, so basically
Oh, is it a Flintstones character?
no.
Oh.
So back when you have Scooby-Doo start in 1969, where you have, hey, we have a group of humans. That's gonna be a bad choice in a moment. A group of humans, and then like some wacky other character. And so with Scooby-Doo, it is Scooby-Doo. Over the
This one
next
has a
decade,
caveman.
you would have Speed Buggy, which was a talking car.
Sure.
You have Jabberjaw, which is a talking shark. The Funky Phantom is, I guess, a talking ghost isn't notable as such. The ghost is
Yeah.
really the selling point. And then you had Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels.
The Teen Angels?
Yeah, like it's Captain Caveman who's just this very hairy character that mostly just yells Captain Caveman. To my recollection,
Ryan, is he making this up?
No,
No.
this is absolutely a character. His design was almost pill shaped, where they textured the entirety of, so his body was basically sort of this oblong pill shape, and they textured it all as hair. So it was basically like a combination of head hair, beard hair, and body hair.
Oh.
This sort of orbish looking body that the arms and legs kind of came out of.
And then like a nose and a mouth and eyes, but like no.
And a cape. I think he had a cape too.
Yeah.
Did he ever appear on Wacky Races?
Probably.
I would not be surprised.
I feel like
he also shows up voiced by Tracy Morgan in Scoob.
Oh, I want to see that. Is that good?
Don't.
Oh. Yeah, Mike's the biggest Scooby-Doo fan I know.
In that they basically they have a Captain Caveman appearance, but he's I think as I recall he's really just a hairy guy from like New Jersey, but is surrounded by like a whole bunch of actual cavemen. It was this thing where it's like, if you're gonna, because Scoob was basically an attempt to create the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, and it was just a large misstep.
They already had the Hanna-Barbera extended universe. It was called Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law.
Oh God, Ryan! Did we just become best friends?
Not expanded.
Oh my gosh, Harvey Birdman is like Rick and Morty before Rick and Morty was a thing. Like, oh my God. I'm so happy you reminded me that show exists and I have all the episodes on DVD.
Captain Caveman is in one of the episodes.
That must be where I know him from. He handles like he's this client. I think that's it.
I think he's in there's a Scooby Doo episode from something relatively recent where, long story short, spoiler for a Scooby Doo episode that I can't remember what it's out of. Might have been Mystery Incorporated because that it feels like a thing they would have done. Basically, the whole thing turns out to be a Scooby Doo fever dream, where it is
Scooby Doo Fever Dream is a great name for a band.
where the gist of it is like to solve a mystery and to kind of deal with like Scooby's own like questions of if he's a part of the team versus like a mascot of the team. It's basically all the mystery solving group team mascots are like the only ones that haven't been captured and have to save everybody else. And I want to say I think Captain Caveman may have made it in there. I know Jabberjaw was in there and Funky Phantom was.
Oh my God. So it's like the villain meeting from Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. It's this weird crossover thing, which they'd done before. Like, I know about Speed Buggy from the crossover between Speed Buggy and Scooby Doo.
So I'd like to take a second to address our listener. And yeah, I said listener. We planned on doing 4 of these caveman games in one episode because we were like, we're not gonna have much to say. But these guys are just too fun. We just keep. I mean, I guess Captain Caveman is technically not off topic, but we should get on to Congo's Caper, shall we?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So let me give you some trivia. Once again, developed by Data East, the canonical link to Joe and Mac was removed for the North American release, but there are still a few notable connections. There is the battle with the T-Rex that plays more or less identically to the first boss of Joe and Mac. There is the fight with a flying demon inside the stomach of the T-Rex. That happens again. And did you guys find this little Easter egg? Can you see it on my screen?
Oh, neat.
Yeah. It's a Joe statue from Joe and Mac. It is this little area that spawns giant jewels if you strike the statue, and it's the little victory pose that Joe would do at the end of a level. So I thought that was cute. Other interesting things here.
The pink pterodactyls again as well.
The pink pterodactyls, right? They will carry you to a bonus stage. If I guess in the first game you had to hatch them, in this game you have to rescue them. They're being attacked by.
Sometimes you just had to find them. They're just off screen.
Yeah. Emi Shimizu was one of the lead composers of the game, and she was also the sound designer. And she is the voice that was used for the and all the little yips and yeps and stuff. So I thought that was kind of neat because you don't really have a lot of voice recordings in the Super Nintendo era. So I thought that was kind of cool that her voice is sort of living on. And when Congo transitions from one stage to the next. Mike, you ready for this? Oh, I'm so excited. Listen to this, Mike.
Oh, God. I didn't notice that.
Ring a bell, Mike?
I wouldn't call that a bell, but yeah. That is is it the Minsky pickup?
Yes. Oh my gosh, Ryan, I'm a good teacher. This was a weird, obscure connection in the Kirby NES game where that note progression like originally was used in a burlesque house. And it became just sort of synonymous with wackiness and silliness.
I mean, I guess it does make kind of sense to use music from a burlesque house in a Kirby game. I mean, both involve a lot of sucking.
Oh my God. Whoa. Okay. You guys, my students are starting to ask about the podcast. And I've decided not to tell them until they're no longer my student. And that is absolutely the right call. Oh, geez.
I can't wait to see if we get a spike of listens in June.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about what I like about this game.
Cut that part out.
No, it's too late. I thought this Congo's Caper, it felt more creative and imaginative than Joe and Mac. The worlds have a theme that centers around the area boss. Ryan mentioned Mega Man earlier, and I think this game reminded me of Mega Man. There is this pirate world, and it has these swimming sections where you're swimming, and then the water level is raising and lowering, and so it is affecting how much access to the screen that you have, and there's little landmines to avoid. And on top of that, there's like lightning striking from above. So I love it when a game throws a lot of different obstacles at you in kind of a fun combination I hadn't seen before. So I thought that was pretty cool. The horror land, it has these cavemen ghosts that attack you.
This is the
And
Ghost and Ghouls stage.
oh my, what? The plagiarism continues?
Mm-hmm.
That is how the
Ghosts and
manual calls it.
Ghouls stage. And to be clear, Ghouls and Ghosts is a game we're going to get to in this podcast. Jeez. I wonder if people knew about this and they were like salty, or if they were like, hey, that's cool. So, but yeah, these cavemen ghosts, they can only be defeated by activating these massive light bulbs to, sort of ward off the ghosts. And then there was this volcano land, and you had to run across these crazily tilting platforms. The whole level is melting into pools of lava, and even the enemies are falling in and dying. And it just felt really apocalyptic in kind of a cool way. Did you guys get to any of these levels? Because you were not using rewinding like I am, so I'm not sure how far you got.
I made it to stage select because you have to play like 4 levels before you get to that select which of these 4 stages you would like to do, which are the water, speeding, ghosts and ghouls, and modern technology stages.
Yeah.
I did not get that far. I got to the end of what I think is the first stage, right after the volcano blows up, and I went into the T-Rex. Or am I thinking? I might be thinking of a different. Is that what this one?
No, that
That
happened
was
early on in this game.
Yeah.
No. I'm thinking of the volcano. No, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the volcano level from a different game. But yeah, you get to the end of the first stage. You beat the ridiculously easy T-Rex boss. And then you go inside and you face I don't even know why he's there. You don't have to hit the boss. I beat the boss just by killing the cavemen he spit out. That's all I did. I found a spot right at the front of that one raised platform. I stood there and I swung my club back, forward over and over again. And all it did was just, it killed all the cavemen. I farmed 1-ups and I beat the boss somehow.
Well, it's because the caveman, when you kill them, go off and will do damage to what they hit in the path.
Yeah,
I thought that I considered that. Yeah,
it's caveman baseball.
Yeah,
I was at a spot where I would kill the first one, which would kill the second one, which would hit the boss.
Okay.
Kind of a chain reaction sort of thing. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah, but I did not get past the demon kid in the gut. I failed miserably.
I mean, it's if you're not using the rewind or abusing the rewind like I do, you're probably not going to get very far in this game. But so I said it's centered around different bosses. There's some cool boss fights. So there's a Dracula-like caveman, and he splits into this swarm of bats, and you have to hit each individual bat in order to make the boss materialize. And it's like, okay, this is kind of a cool mechanic. Mike, you said there was a technology themed level. What was the wording?
Modern technology.
Yeah, so in that level, the boss is a caveman who has built a robot dinosaur. And I just find it really charming how these games, it's like, yeah, we're back in, the caveman days, but there's robots. Like robotization. And then the final boss is pretty epic. It's this dragon that like hulks out halfway through the fight to become a lot more physically imposing. So it felt like the levels were more interesting than the Joe and Mac ones, because like Ryan said, the Joe and Mac levels just felt like sort of cookie cutter ice stage, lava stage, tree stage. This felt like it had a bit more thought and creativity put into it. Would you guys agree, or are you kind of still underwhelmed?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, Joe and Mac very much followed the Super Mario Brothers, Plains World, Ice World, Fire World, Water World, Desert World, progression.
In its defense, Waterworld is a very cool stunt show.
Yes.
Mike will not let us stay on topic. Keep going, Ryan.
The fact that the Waterworld stunt show exists at all.
To this day, it tells you a lot.
Yeah, it tells you exactly how awesome that thing is. But yeah, this one definitely. I mean, obviously, I didn't see much of it because I only got to the I don't even know if you could call the inside part of the T-Rex a stage because it's so short. But I didn't get very far in the game, so I didn't get to see all of these. Like I'm looking at this now, going the clips that you're putting up and going, wow, I really wish I'd gotten to play these more interesting stages.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of why I, abuse the rewind is that I kind of feel this obligation. If I'm going to talk about the quality of a game, like, well, what if the later levels and moments? I mean, look at this screenshot. Like, this is such a cool screenshot
Mhm.
of the fire and the expressions, and just you kind of just get an instant sense of panic, I think, when you're looking at
Yeah.
it. I also liked how this game visually communicated, damage. You would devolve back into your cute little monkey form, and it kind of reminded me of Ghouls and Ghosts when you would get hit and you would lose your armor.
Mhm.
And I'm always a big fan of that when you're taking damage and like you can visually see, that you are in peril. And the Super Congo would be the opposite of that. So when you turn into a monkey upon near death, you have to find those red gems to turn back into your human form. But if you get 3 of those gems without needing them, or in other words, 3 extra red gems, you become all, Ryan, you said Dragon Ball Z, you kind of become Super Saiyan.
Oh
You
yeah, no,
your
this is
hair
clearly
changes
Super
color,
Saiyan. No question.
you're faster, your club does more damage, and if you mash the jump button, you will float down, and give you a lot more control of your jump trajectory. And you could skip like entire sections of levels with that technique, but I think you guys would probably say that's a plus because I don't think
And
you guys like this game that much.
when we get to the Joy-Cons, I actually have a thought about that exact system that I will bring up.
So I'm ready for that, Mike. Any Joy
Oh,
Pros?
I definitely do not have Joy Pros for this
Oh,
game.
all right, Ryan, go Joy-Con. What don't you like about Congo's Caper?
so interestingly, and I'm going to use a more recent game as a reference point for this. So in Dark Soul, or not Dark Souls, in Demon's Souls,
Great game.
if you die, the game drops you to half health until you can reclaim your humanity.
Yes,
The only way you can reclaim humanity is
I remember that. Yeah.
now.
Is what?
You'll note that, and you'll note if you go to Dark Souls or literally any other FromSoft game after that, they changed it, where you
Yeah,
just
you had
have
to.
to get back to where you died to get
Yes.
all of your health back. And the reason for that is, and this is the reason I ran into this in Congo's Caper, was great. Full health is this Super Saiyan form, right?
Yeah.
Because you now have 3 hits before you become a monkey instead of 1. But if you die, you go back to only having 1 health.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go Super Saiyan and get to a boss, you get 1 shot to beat that boss
Yeah.
as a Super Saiyan. And if you fail, you get to spend every other attempt as a normal human, normal monkey boy.
I'm
With
so proud
1
of you
health.
for the Demon Souls connection. I never would have added that up, but you're right. It's a very similar system.
Yeah. And it's just it is punishing for not being, it is punishing success with making it needlessly harder. Like if you
Yeah.
came back, if you were like if you hit a checkpoint, because all the checkpoints in the game are invisible. If you hit one of those invisible checkpoints as a Super Saiyan, you should come back as that Super Saiyan.
Yeah.
Especially when the checkpoint is 1 screen away from a boss fight.
It's so funny though. I can just sense in how you're talking, like these games were not nearly as fun if you were playing them the way they did back in the 90s and like just taking damage and getting frustrated and dying. I had a decent time with Congo's Caper, but again, I wouldn't lose the Super Saiyan state. I would just, oh, well, I know the enemy's there now. I'll rewind and do that better. So it sort of like feels like speed running without all the work because you can just, you know, but that's kind of fun to play games that way, honestly.
Mhm.
And I did
Mike,
Oh
watch
yeah.
a speed run of this, and one of the
oh,
key
did
things
you?
that basically, yeah, because it was like I would like to know what the heck else was going on with this,
Okay.
and one of the big things was effectively being in this mode, and it's like, yeah, you pretty much have to be in this because if you lose this, it's very difficult to get going again.
Yep. Start the speed run over.
So you didn't beat this game.
I did not beat this game. Did you beat this game?
Oh, I intended, Mike. I did. Um, but back to the Joy Cons though. I just the nondescript gray slab I'm showing you here. I feel like Joe and Mac, even though the game didn't look as good, it felt more consistently themed. I don't like how this game. It's like, oh yeah, yellow gems floating, weird little gray slab platforms. We can't even be bothered to make these look like a cloud. It's just like jump from one gray slab to the other. It's like it feels like almost like a texture is missing.
I was
And
also
Uh,
say with the power up system is I think
yeah.
the frustration is so also if you are picking up those red gems, so you are human and trying to work your way up. If you get hit, you lose, and you had two of them, you lose both. So it resets you down fairly hard.
Yeah. Unnecessarily punishing.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And on top of that, the red eggs and the red gems have almost identical sprites.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So you'll jump thinking, I'll grab this gem in midair and slam into it because the eggs have collision.
The gems don't. Oh man. So lots of little quality of life things that made you
Yeah,
guys
it's like the only
miserable.
thing that I got as far as I did was because this gets you into bonus levels that you would then get a bunch of lives out of.
So there is, you guys will appreciate this because I suffered a bit like you guys had to. There's a part in later in this game, it's a volcano level, and there's a Raiders of the Lost Ark boulder chase, right? You're running from this giant boulder, and it killed me every time. And I would rewind it and I would get the jumps faster, and it killed me every time. And I was like, why is this literally impossible? Oh my gosh, is there a run button? And I went to the options, and I'm showing you guys a picture of the options. Ain't no run button listed,
Mm-hmm.
but sure enough, if you hold down the trigger button, Congo will run,
Yep.
which led me to go back to Joe and Mac and discover that that was also a thing in that game. There was a hidden run button that made Joe and Mac a lot easier and made Congo's caper beatable. Mike, I don't know if you have, sometimes you have the manuals kind of on your computer ready to go. Is that the case with Congo's caper here?
I do. I am
Does it
checking.
mention running?
Let's see if we mention running.
Because you need it to beat the game.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Well, they should have told me because I'm bitter about it.
Yeah.
Other Joy Cons for Congo's Caper before we head on to Caveman game number 3.
I think there's too much that hit. You're far too vulnerable for the number of things that hit you for this to really just work for me. Like it's the amount of time I spent sort of powered up was so little because so many things would do damage in frustrating ways.
And no weapons. You just have your club.
And the hitbox was not good on the club.
Yeah, but it's like, and considering, this was in Japan a sequel to Caveman Ninja where you had boomerangs and you had giant wheels and everything. Just give him a club and let him go Super Saiyan. Weird
Yeah,
choice. Weird choice.
Yeah.
Maybe why they decided to change the name.
probably.
So whoa, Mike, did you hear that?
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to T-wreck the whole studio.
I think we got to wrap this up for today, guys. Well, thanks, Ryan, for joining us. You can catch his content at YouTube. WarBoss5 is the channel where he posts his Twitch VODs and all his other content. And we are going to wrap this one up and continue it next time. So don't forget to join the fun at theoldswitcheroo.com. You can join our Discord. You can leave an old timey voicemail. We zeet, we gram, we tube, we talk. You can catch all our social media links there. And join us next time for part 2 of our dino-sized caveman episode. We're going to continue clubbing through Joe and Mac 2, Lost in the Tropics, and Prehistoric Man, and then declare all 4 games as Nintendo's or Nintendon'ts. This has been the Old Switcheroo, where we've been talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Jaymo. We'll see you soon. Game on, everyone.
Wait, can you
Book.
switch weapons?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Don't you wish you knew that?
How?
Select.
Yeah. Or I guess on the Switch, that'd be like the minus button.
Keep forgetting select as a button.
Yeah. You're not alone. We're going to talk about that. The hidden controls of these games. Whoa, Mike, you heard that, right?
Yeah, it's going to T-wreck the whole. Dang it.
Oh, that's gold. We got to go for that. Okay.